Good evening, everyone. I'm Howard Herring. I'm the president of the New World Symphony. It's great to have you. Welcome to our candidates and to our mayoral candidates as well. This is the truest pavilion, the smaller performance space in this building, for those of you who are here for the first time. And we use this for meetings. We also very much part of our rehearsal and concert space, and this room gets a lot of use. Many of you know this building, the New World Center, as the home of the New World Symphony. Our fellows play 70 concerts a year, most of them in the Michael Tilson Thomas Performance Hall, who has just been named to the, what do we call it? Hall of Fame, thank you, Hall of Fame. 12 of those concerts in the hall are wall cast out to the park, Soundscape Park. Those 70 concerts are only part of what we do. We do about 60 events per year that are for the community. We see ourselves as a community asset. When we talked with Frank Gehry about building this building, we said make it right for us, make us able to pursue our mission and vision in this building, but also build it as a community asset, and it has become so. In the last election, Miami Beach voters approved a $159 million bond issue, and that was to support 14 of the city's cultural organizations. 65% of the voters were approved of that bond. All of us, all 14 of us, are most grateful. All of us see a bright future for this city, and we're ready to serve Miami Beach residents with our programs and build the Miami Beach brand with our reputations. Government can craft policy and structure. They can build an environment that supports and encourages public-private partnerships, and those partnerships are the foundation beneath each of our cultural organizations. Our goal tonight is to allow the candidates a chance to reflect on accomplishments and imagine the policies and structures that will support cultural organizations that serve the community and build the city's brand. Tom Hudson will moderate this discussion. Tom was the host and producer of WLRN's Sunshine Economy from 2013 to 2022. We almost lost him to WAMU in Washington, D.C., but he is back, and he is the senior economics editor and special correspondent at WLRN. His voice and his presence guide us as we become a more sophisticated, aspirational, and confident community. We ask that the candidates stick to the subject of cultural organizations and the benefits that accrue to all of us. To define cultural organizations, I propose we consider them to be focused on a specific discipline, welcoming to the public, and with a mission and vision that serves the community. In thinking about this evening's topic, I went back to Jane Jacobs' book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. It was published in 1961, and it's based on her experience in New York. She does take a swing at Miami Beach. She calls it a city that prefers the superficiality of the new. Yeah, you can Twitter at that one. That was in 1961, before the majority of these 14 cultural organizations were founded. I think she'd be intrigued by today's Miami Beach and optimistic about its future. One primary reason is evident in her comment. A city's very wholeness in bringing people together with communities of interest is one of the city's greatest assets. That's what cultural organizations do. We bring people together in these communities of interest. And as an example of that, when we do a wall cast that attracts about 2,000 people to Soundscape Park, 80% of that audience tells us that they come in groups of 5 or more. It's instant community. Of course, they get to experience the beauty of a Miami evening. They get to be together, and they get to hear some incredible music at the highest level of technological projection and amplification. All 14 of us can tell that story. So we're serving the city by making communities of interest and as home to cultural organizations with significant local, national, and global reputations. One last thought. Most or all of the cultural organizations represented here tonight, including New World, are legally prevented from endorsing any candidate for public office. So this evening is not about endorsing candidates. The intent is to bring the candidates and Miami Beach voting public together to dialogue about the importance of arts and culture in our community, and the audience tonight will make their own decisions as they head to the polls in November. With that, I give the leadership of this meeting to Tom Hudson. Tom?
Thank you very much, Howard. Really appreciate it. And thank you to the staff here at the New World Center for hosting. My name is Tom Hudson. I'm with WLRN Radio, the NPR station here serving South Florida, the most dynamic and interesting place in the world as far as I'm concerned. And some of these candidates make that so right here in Miami Beach, right? We are streaming on Facebook Live here for our online audience. We appreciate the attention that they have, and we really appreciate you coming out tonight to show the support in the community and the interest in arts and culture in Miami Beach. Couple of things. One is on your way in, you may have seen some note cards and a pencil. I know that's analog communication these days when we're so used to communicating with our thumbs on screens, but we are inviting you to write questions down, hold them up in the air, and our friends from the New World Center will come around and collect those, and we'll try to put as many of those to the candidates as we can in the limited time that we have. So that's why the note cards are there. Please take advantage of those if you do have specific questions. And please make it a question as opposed to a comment so we can put those to the ladies and gentlemen up on our stage. Second piece, as Howard mentioned, we're going to do our very level best to focus on arts and culture. There's so many other issues, certainly in Miami Beach, that are front of mind, and many of those intersect with arts and culture. Housing affordability, transportation, public safety, arts and culture, economic development. Arts and culture plays a role in that, and that's where we're going to focus our attention on today because of our hosts and the organizations that have put this forum together. So with that, enough from me. Let's hear from the candidates. I will ask them a question first and have them introduce themselves and get to the question. As you can see, we do have a nice crowded field for you to choose on Election Day who your next commissioners are going to be on the dais, and we want to get to as many questions as we can. Andres, we're going to start with you. Welcome. Thank you. It's nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Please give us a statement of your vision of arts and culture in Miami Beach if you are elected to the City Commission.
Well, first, arts and culture, many people think that entertainment was a big deal for Miami Beach. I think that arts and culture is a catalyst of what turned us around. Thank God for Art Basel and Norman Brayman and Marty Margulies and the De La Cruzes and Craig Robbins for really fighting to bring Art Basel over to Miami Beach because it turned the tide over for us. And I think that changed the whole dynamic of how people perceive and see Miami Beach for everything across the board, for arts, for culture, for real estate, for who comes to visit us. And I want to continue to see that progress. I have a vision for seeing so much more art in public places. As a matter of fact, one of my true visions is to see Ocean Drive and have the park of Ocean Drive be a sculpture garden throughout where the city commissions a couple of sculptures and then there's a rotation of art sculptures throughout Ocean Drive and change the dynamic of why people want to visit Ocean Drive and make it about art and culture. And it could be a beautiful sculpture garden that becomes an art piece and an art destination throughout the year, not just during times of Art Basel.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David, welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming tonight. Introduce yourself to our your possible future constituents here and share what's your vision of arts and culture in Miami Beach should you be elected to the commission.
Hello, I'm David Suarez. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm probably the least qualified in terms of arts and culture in Miami Beach.
And why do you say that?
I think because when we talk about the issues of Miami Beach, there are, what I've knocked on about 5,000 doors by now. And the issues that people talk about are overdevelopment, public safety, traffic, the environment, accountability. And I can speak to all of those issues. I'm sort of a blank canvas, no pun intended, when it comes to art and culture. I'm going to rely on our local leaders, for example, Ray, to tell me what is the best direction for Miami Beach to go in terms of art. And I know that Miami Beach, as Andre said, is completely different now that Basel came. And that was one vote away from not happening. And we are on a world stage now because of Art Basel, and art does play a role, and a very important role. How to move that and what direction, I'm gonna let the leaders tell me what to do, and guide me with their expertise on this subject matter.
Do you think that art and culture intersect some of those other issues that you're hearing as you are ringing and knocking on doors?
I believe it can.
Has it? Does it today?
You know, people tell me at the door they can't afford to live where they do. Okay? They have told me that, listen, you know, I'm not rich, I'm not poor, but I'm getting priced out of the market. Yeah. And that's not to make arts and culture any less valuable to the community, but there are people struggling to make rent here.
Yeah. Yep.
And
We'll talk about housing affordability as it intersects, certainly, art. Marcella, nice to see you. Thank you for coming this evening. Your vision for arts and culture in this community, if you have a public term.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcella Novella. I'm the chairperson for Art and Public Places for the city of Miami Beach. I've sat on that board for 6 years. But you know what? I've been a supporter of the arts for over 25 years. In 2002, when Art Basel came to Miami Beach, it changed my life because I saw a whole new world that I wanted to devote my life to. So I followed up and I devoted my life to art. I joined the MAM Contemporaries and I became the chairperson for their Contemporaries group. And then in the first year, I quadrupled their membership. We had something like 100 members. We went to 400 members in my first year of leadership. After that, the Board of Trustees approached me and they said, Marcella, you're doing such great things for our community and for our arts. Why don't you join the Board of Trustees? I was the youngest member at that time to ever been asked or to join the Board of Trustees at the Perez Art Museum. We transitioned from the Miami Art Museum to the Perez Art Museum, which was amazing. I'm sure you've all been there and you can see what these little improvements to our cultural institutions can do for our community. And this $159 GEO bond is just that. Now we can give more money to the New World Symphony, to the Bass, to the ballet. We can really expand upon what's already there so we can be the next destination for arts and culture in our community and in the world. So this is a fabulous opportunity. I'm so happy that you all voted yes to arts and culture because yes, this is the answer. We want a resurrection for Miami Beach. This is it.
Joe, welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. What is your vision for arts and culture and how it intersects some of these other issues that we'll be talking about this evening?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Joseph Magazine. I live here in Miami Beach with 3 generations of my family. My mom and dad that I'm lucky enough to have attend here with me as well. Also my daughter who is at home doing homework with her mother. In terms of how art and culture goes with Miami Beach, it's easy to say it goes hand in hand, but in many ways, it embodies Miami Beach. It's not just part of our identity. In many ways, it leads our identity. But we can't look at it in a silo. We can't just say we will be an arts and culture destination and ignore the rest. I follow the events not only in Miami Beach very closely, but around the region. And when I go to the Downtown Development Authority meetings, that's an organization like the Chamber of Commerce across the bay in the city of Miami. Guess what they have on their agenda? Art Basel, South Beach Food and Wine Fest. And if we continue to lose focus of some of those other topics, like public safety, like housing affordability, and allow Miami and the design district to be the preeminent place in our region, they are coming for our most prized events. At times, we have incredible hubris in Miami Beach. And oftentimes, I'm guilty of that as well, saying we'll always be fine because we're Miami Beach. That's not the case, because we're not the only game in town anymore. So we need to rely heavily on arts and culture to move us forward. I was on the front lines fighting for that $159 million GEO bond. I went to every single committee meeting when they discussed the projects that they were going to allocate it to. I was out in front of City Hall during early voting with Ray, holding signs to say yes to the arts, because I know not only is it important to Miami Beach, it's part of our identity.
Joe, thank you very much. Tanya, nice to see you. Welcome to the forum. Your vision, please scope out what your vision looks like in your public term if you're elected.
Happily. Thank you for having us all here tonight. I just want to say my phone is up here just because my daughter is out of the country and had a medical drama last night, and just if it rings, it's her. That's the only reason it's up here. And she's fine, don't worry.
Good.
So, arts and culture is in my DNA. My mom is an art historian. In fact, when Ma'am transitioned to Pam, she was the president of the docents who helped get Pam ready for its first ever opening the week of Art Basel. No pressure, but she was the woman for the job. And I grew up overseas, all over Europe and South America, and was dragged to every conceivable museum and historic building in a 30-mile circumference of anywhere that we were. My children have become artists in their own rights, self-taught artists and musicians, and so from a personal level, it's something I prize and value dearly. Arts and cultures can redefine a city. It can turn a moribund, down on its heels city, which we are not, by the way, but it can elevate a downtrodden city looking to redefine its place in the world by providing a unique series of offerings in a beautiful or interesting or renovated or adaptively reused context. And that is the opportunity we have here, building on an incredibly strong base. I actually have a vision of taking our cultural corridor, which loosely goes from the southern end of Washington all the way up, stopping along the beautiful cultural spots that we have like this, the Miami Design Preservation League, Art Deco Museum is just a block off. We've got the Jewish Museum, we've got the Wilsonian, the Fillmore is going to be up and at it again. You go a little bit further north to Faena, you've got another amazing arts district. You go a little bit further north, you've got the incredible band shell. We're going to be rebuilding the Byron Carlisle into a really unique opportunity for a cultural and community complex that can serve all kinds of different constituencies. And that's with what's already existing, right? So then imagine what we can build on top of that. We also have a ton of really wealthy people who are moving to the city every day. And we need to be doing some kind of a public-private partnership. We do it for development all the time, but why aren't we doing that for financial development so that the folks who are coming from New York and Chicago and San Francisco who are used to really great cultural institutions make an investment in ours to help bolster our city coffers, our tax dollars that came from the GO bond. And the third thing that I would really like to see us enhance are these little pockets of gems of unexpected art in unexpected places. If you walk around the backside of the convention center along the canal, there's this gorgeous sculpture garden. Who knew? But it's there. And we can tuck those little gems in bigger ways like that, or in smaller ways by painting, having school kids come up with a competition and award the winning class the opportunity to paint our pumps or generators that have been part of our infrastructure as we deal with resilience. So I have a lot of ideas of what I'd like to see enhance what is already a very strong arts and culture ecosphere in our city.
Thank you, Tanya. Mitch, you were the last one to bat with this specific question, so everybody has a table setter here.
Sure.
Please scope out your vision
Thank
for
you,
arts
Tom.
and culture.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for having this event tonight. I arrived here in 1988 during the inaugural year of the New World Symphony when the performances were held at the Lincoln Theater. I was here for the 90s when art and culture really flourished. These days, the community is rough around the edges. I'm glad that the bond offering passed. I like to see these institutions cultivate their programming for when we reemerge, we do it powerfully and we recreate and have our greatest days in front of us.
What do you mean by reemerge?
In recent years, I believe our brand, and it clearly has, been decimated. I live in the entertainment district. It's embarrassing what goes on outside my building. It's embarrassing to have friends, family, and I run a hotel, and even hotel guests who've been coming here for decades. So many have told me, Mitch, we're going to seek out alternative vacation destinations. We no longer feel safe.
You used a term, Mitch, and Andres used a term about entertainment. Compare and contrast a little bit that entertainment brand versus an arts and culture brand.
My neighborhood embraces open-air entertainment by businesses, where the businesses exploit the public realm with blasting music, dance performances. I've always argued that needs to be brought inside. That what creates what I term the carnival-like, crime-ridden circus, which began in my neighborhood, but it's become endemic throughout the community. I believe once we address that, and if elected, it will be addressed, that's when cultural institutions can really reemerge strongly.
I'll remind folks, if you've got a piece of paper with a question, go ahead and write them. We'll pick them up here. Let's talk about arts and culture intersecting affordability. David, you brought this up. This is a significant issue. It's an economic issue. It's a pocketbook issue. It's an economic development issue, certainly. Joe, I'll just throw it to you randomly here, but tell us, everybody supported the question about housing affordability and arts, right? Nobody's going to turn that down. But talk specifically, how are you going to go about trying to cultivate affordable housing for an arts and culture economy? I'm going to put it to Joe and then David.
Tom, thank you for the question, and I'm glad we're getting on to specifics about this, because it's easy to throw buzzwords around, but the specifics are important.
That's right.
In many ways, housing affordability and this very neighborhood started my campaign. It was a building that I saw at the Historic Preservation Board meeting, just 2 blocks away from here. 150 units. Those residents are being kicked out to turn it into a hotel in the middle of our residential neighborhood. Do you know who lives there? Teachers. A teacher from Fisher Feinberg and Miami Beach High School. Do you know why she doesn't teach anymore? Because she has leukemia, and she's being kicked out of her home to turn it into a hotel. And when I saw that happening in my city, that's when I said, if you care as much about this city as you say you do, it's time to put 2 feet in.
So what are some of the strategies you'd like to go 2 feet in?
Specific. 1, on day 1, unequivocal, a moratorium on any residential housing being turned into transient usages. That Collins Park workforce housing development is fantastic. Fantastic. I applaud the community for coming together and facilitating it. But that brought 80 units of workforce housing, and that took about 10 years to facilitate. And with today's interest rates, there's 0 chance that gets built again. We'll be waiting another 10 years for 80 more units. But on every single block in this neighborhood, hundreds of people are being kicked out on a monthly basis. So on day 1, you do a moratorium. I will ensure I can work with my colleagues to make a moratorium that no more of our community members, no more of our residents are being kicked out of their homes. And then,
so hold on a second. Let me just dig into what exactly that means, right? You would put a moratorium on evictions?
No, not evictions. No. A moratorium on predatory developers coming in and kicking out our most vulnerable community members to turn them into hotels.
I see.
Okay?
And
So a
define
change in
vulnerable.
use.
Economically vulnerable?
Yes,
It's
and many times all of
means
us.
test.
Yeah,
Okay.
but all of us. Basically, focus on the usage of those buildings. Right now, Miami Beach is the only city in Florida, the only city that is losing full-time residents. And that infects our entire ecosystem because we have to go further and further to transient use.
Miami-Dade County as a whole lost population in the last census. Not all of that came from Miami Beach. So I don't think Miami Beach is the only city in the state of Florida losing population.
Tom, I know exactly what article you're referring to. That actually looked at a gross number, but Miami Beach from 2010 to 2020, and then from 2020 to 2022.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
How does that plan address housing for arts and culture employees
Yep.
and
So that is
creators?
just step 1, because many of our artists are living in these very homes. There's 150 people that lived there for 10 and 20 years. Of course there's artists there. It's in the middle of our art and culture mecca right here in Collins Park. And those are the people, our friends, our neighbors, that are we being allowed to kick out of their homes. It is great that we have Art Basel, But who are we as a progressive community if we stand by and allow our most vulnerable neighbors, many of which are art supporters themselves, to be kicked out of their homes?
Okay, David, how would you go about addressing housing affordability as it relates to an arts and culture workforce?
Not to reiterate what Joe said, but he's right. When we talk about spending tens of millions of dollars on maybe 80 units of art force housing, that's going to take X amount of years. We're not making a dent in the affordable housing situation. Right now in Miami Beach, there is a proliferation of residential buildings that are being converted into short-term hotels. And these aren't regular hotels. These are hotels where you come in, you check in with a QR code, and there's no security, there's no staff, there's no oversight, there's no parking. And it's next to families. It's next to people where they're raising their children. And it's being converted every day. You know, Flamingo Park, South Beach. We used to house the artists, the workforce, our bartenders, our artists, our chefs, waiters, everyone that supplied the city with work. And right now, they can't afford to live here. They have to go to the mainland, and then they have to spend an hour in traffic to get here, and an hour in traffic to get back home.
David, what's a strategy that you would like to
So
deploy if you're elected?
So one of the things, as Joe mentioned, and we agree on this wholeheartedly, is to stop the conversion from anything residential to short-term use citywide.
Does anybody oppose that? Everybody is for that.
And one of the other options one of the other tools that we have is, you know, that's happening two ways. You either have an apartment building that's owned by one person, or you have a condo building of maybe anywhere from 4 to 20 units, maybe larger, where you have predatory investors that come in and they'll buy multiple units in a building. And then they'll gain ownership of the board. And they do that because each ownership is one vote. What I would do on day one is work with our legal department and reach out to every single condominium. And it's possible because there's a finite number of condominiums, and provide them with sort of a legal template, allowing them to change their bylaws that basically says no matter how many units you own, you get one vote. That will prevent a lot of that predatory investors.
Vote per owner as
Correct.
opposed to per unit. Okay, David. Andres, I know you wanted to talk. Tanya, and then Marcella.
I just want to mention it's going to be a little hard to change condo docs on condos like that. But it's happening across the board in South Florida. The displacement of people at all levels, whether you're making $30,000, $50,000, or $100,000 plus, no matter where you're living. You know, when Champagne Towers fell and changed the regulations of code and inspections into these buildings, the majority of these buildings are getting very strong special assessments. Taxes and insurance are displacing so many people because the landlords now have to raise the rent and displacing a lot of people across the board. I think that the only way to implement quick recourse to help with affordable housing is that if there's a public-private partnership with developers who own projects, that you could give them an incentive to sort of lock in rental rates and help reduce those increases that are happening right now with these special assessments. Many people who are condo owners are even getting displaced because their special assessments are $50, $100, $200,000.
Explain a little bit more about what you mean by lock in those.
So if you give them, if you give the developers or the owners of the properties some type of a tax incentive in order for them to be able to not raise the rent as much, then you could create a partnership or you could create a pool of units throughout Miami Beach to alleviate those increases in rent.
How significant would that incentive, that subsidy have to be, given that it's only the Miami Beach portion that you'll be able to?
You know, for many people, the increase of $100 in rent in many of the communities that I'm speaking to, people that I'm knocking on their doors, that might mean 2 days of them not eating. Okay. You know, they're going day to day on their expenses. So I think that that's the only way that you can rapidly make an impact with the housing costs here in Miami Beach.
Tanya and then Marcella on this. And remember, we're trying to really focus, yes, on housing affordability, but particularly as it relates to that arts and culture workforce that has thrived here. The arts and culture economy responsible for, I think, reaching 10 times the population of Miami Beach. The organizations that are above you, they reach 10 times the number of people who call Miami Beach home.
So just to follow on from what Andres was saying, I've been talking about a tax incentive for developing new affordable housing programs where the city would not lose any money. There would be, the city would tax the existing building at the same rate, and then the tax would be incurred over the phased in over the next 5 years. So the tax revenue would go up by 20% over the next 5 years. But that's for new projects, possibly for adaptive reuse. I'd have to dig into that a little bit further. But there are two things that I wanted to say. One in particular about the Byron Carlisle, because I know there's a lot of misinformation swirling about that. But there is a really big opportunity. We all wanted to save that building, but it's past that point, not just because of how much money it would cost, but also because the projects, the performances that that building was designed for are no longer relevant to our arts and culture consumer universe, right? You don't need one massive movie theater. It's very difficult to stage plays there because you literally have to exit stage left, walk through the offices behind the stage and walk back in to get to stage right. So there is this opportunity to take elements from the design that we love and pay homage to that in the design of the building, but create this amazing complex that will serve not only as performance spaces of various stripes, including recording studios for art, for kids and galleries and all that kind of good stuff, but also housing for the organizations themselves, office housing, but more importantly, without without asking for variances, that building can go up to 7 or 8 stories and be contextually appropriate and provide living, not micro units, not short-term rentals, because God knows we've got a 20-story building already coming to that intersection in North Beach with another 12 to come, but actual apartments that people who work at the band shell, for instance, Benton Galgay, for instance, would come live here in a microsecond if he had access to an affordable apartment that he could work at.
We had an audience question about the Carlisle, and I'll just put this to a group. Do you support the construction of the new Carlisle Theater purpose-built for the arts? Everybody support that?
Yes.
Anybody
Yes.
not support it as is?
I'd like to see it adaptively reused, the existing structure
you
retained,
you'd
not demolished,
You prefer the existing structure as opposed to a new construction?
with perhaps new construction added onto it.
Okay.
And
It's
I
a
would,
part of our history.
I would have to also see the project. I mean, everyone that lives around the Byron loves the Byron, and we want to make sure that we preserve the aesthetics of the Byron, and also hopefully have a project that is not going to cause too much traffic or overdevelopment.
Marcella, you wanted to talk about affordable housing.
I'll be quick, and
Arts
then
and
I'll
culture
I'll answer both.
Okay.
To start, short-term rentals are all over our city. We have thousands and thousands of short-term rentals. Why? Because it makes economic sense to the people who own them. Yes, I get that it's unfortunate that people are losing their homes. It's our turn as a city to come in and incentivize these owners of these units to convert back to long-term leases, whether it's partnering with arts organizations, but we need to help them make money because Miami Beach is expensive. And if they're going to make more money renting it short-term, and Tallahassee preempts us from being able to control it, what do? We need to find a solution. Our solution is incentivizing long-term leases. If we incentivize long-term leases, we're going to have thousands of units available at our disposal immediately.
What are some of those tools, some of those incentives you would want to consider?
I think we would
And what
have
do you mean by long-term lease?
Long-term, 1-year leases. We're not talking 6 months, 1-year leases, because that's going to be able to bring our teachers back, our doctors back, people who want to live here, because everyone wants to be here. We live in the most beautiful city in the world. Of course they want to be here.
And what are some of those incentives?
I think you would have to focus on, that's actually 2 things. One, you'd give a tax break, because some of these people own multiple units. They own 5, 6, 7 units. You can only homestead 1. So if we say, if you're going to convert to a long-term rental, we'll give you a tax credit, we'll give you maybe even a percentage of what they would be making as a credit towards, to help them make the same amount of money or close to the same amount of money as they would be with short-term rentals. It's cheaper, actually, than having to build these projects that would take 10, 20 years to get approved and funded.
But there's a cost to the city coffers for those incentives.
There is a cost, but I think the cost is worth it, because we would be putting product back on the market immediately. It's not something that's going to be a solution for 10, 20 years. It's a solution for today. And then regarding the Byron Carlisle, I agree with Mitch. I think adaptive reuse is what we deserve in our community, because if you look at any world-class European city or places where they have historic properties, they are adapted to the future. They're modernized. They're not just torn down and discarded. We really have to be cognizant of this, especially when we see what's happening on Ocean Drive. You really want to preserve our history and our identity while making it able to make sense for the future.
So your preference there would be adaptive reuse, not new construction?
Yes.
I see. Mitch, you had mentioned the entertainment district in your opening vision. Question from the audience. Over the past few years, spring break season has brought forth a number of public safety issues. How do you see arts and culture impacting the reputation or attraction of Miami Beach as a party destination spot?
Well, first of all, we need to, before we rebrand ourselves, we need to send a loud and resounding message to the world that the party is over. And we need to end it.
And how do you do that from the commission?
As I said earlier, bring it inside, because that is what fuels the circus on the streets. And I wanted to go back to affordability. Tom, you didn't give me an opportunity.
Go for it.
2 points. I believe we should take that Airbnb or short-term rental concept a step further. We have thousands of hotel units in the pipeline that have yet to be built. And moreover, our city budget has doubled in the last decade. As a landlord, I can assure you that has a tremendous impact on housing affordability. Costs need to be reined in, and there needs to be no more boondoggle waste, as I see over and over from those we elect.
So give the folks maybe 2 items that you see as boondoggle
The
expenditure.
Scovich Park plan, $100 million. How about the Aquatic Center in
So
North
would you
Beach?
squelch that? It's off the table entirely?
I
Zero
think,
line?
well, based on the budget of the Aquatic Center, it began at 40, now it's 100+ million. That's a no-brainer. You don't build pools on top of structures. Just look at all the parking pedestals and condos that are with their pools out of service due to leaking. Pools don't belong on top of buildings.
Yeah, I just want to.
Plenty of buildings that have existing pools on them.
Most of them have problems, especially in this environment.
Go ahead, Andres.
I just want to talk on Ocean Drive specifically, and Mitch is talking about bringing the party inside. I'm saying take the party outside, because in reality, if we do create this sculpture garden that I'm talking about at Ocean Drive, you're going to change the whole entire demographic of why people are going to Ocean Drive. Right now, people are visiting Ocean Drive because they think it's an iconic street, which it is, and we need to protect it more. But if we create a reason for locals and people from around the world to actually go and use it as a cultural hub, it will change who goes to Ocean Drive to visit it and why they're going to Ocean Drive. And by the way, I have a beautiful presentation of what that's going to look like if I'm elected.
You brought your PowerPoint with you.
I did.
Very good. All right, fair enough. So almost all of you mentioned Art Basel when describing your vision. Art Basel, of course, happens for a handful of days in one location here in Miami Beach, and an outside organization comes in. Talk to us and talk to the community here as you're looking and seeking their support about how you will go ahead and look at the prioritization of the GO bond funds and how you will make decisions kinds of lenses that you're going to be using as you're looking at those investments in local organizations, not outside organizations, to come in to help fulfill the kind of vision that you may have. Tanya, I'll go to you randomly first.
Well, so when the GO bond was passed, the organizations put together their wish list of what they needed and what they anticipated spending the monies for. So I would have a parallel track going. So on the one hand, I would do the low-hanging fruit right away, because people like to see that things that they voted on and are spending their tax dollars on, they like to be able to touch those and feel those and hear those and experience them right away. And there was a fair amount of low-hanging fruit that was more about procurement rather than building from scratch. So at the same time, though, that is going, we would need to take a look at the bigger projects like the Byron Carlisle, which, by the way, is not the same project than it was when it was proposed by certain developers several years ago. I want to make that very clear. It's a completely different project. We have $30 million to spend on it, so we don't need to go to those folks again. But it will need to be planned out and vetted out, and RFPs put out to find people who can build it. And so the projects that need a longer runway to get off the ground should be started concurrently. It's a different skill set and a different set of staff resources to do sort of procurement and facilitation than it is urban planning and development, and I think they can be going at the same time, because the sooner we spend the money, the better off we'll all be, the more bang for our collective buck we'll be getting in this time of high inflation.
Thank you, David.
I want to go back to that previous comment about the entertainment district. I think it's important because one of the top issues in Miami Beach is public safety. And when I knock on doors, public safety is synonymous with Ocean Drive. And to Mitch's point, we can have the best, beautiful art structure in the world on Loomis Park, but no one's going to want to come if they're afraid they're going to get shot. Okay? This last spring break, I mean, people from around the world were calling me and saying, "Hey, David, are you okay? It's like a war zone there." Mm-hmm. No, we can throw as much money as we want in arts and culture, and it's not going to make a difference because no one's going to want to come if they don't feel safe walking Ocean Drive or walking anywhere in Miami Beach.
So give us a sense of what that plan would be from your commissionership.
Accountability and enforcement. You know,
Accountability to whom and by whom?
Accountability of the city staff to ensure that shootings don't happen on Miami Beach. And have a strategy, a long-term strategy on how to combat these high-impact weekends that happen every year, despite how much money we throw at it. Okay. And I think one of the ways we can do that is we hire consultants, people who live and breathe this sort of strategy on how to deal with high-impact weekends. So how do they manage Mardi Gras? How do they manage Gasparilla in Tampa?
Do you want to bring it inside, like Mitch talks about?
I think before we do anything, we need to make sure that we get the word out that spring break is over in Miami Beach and that there is going to be no shootings and people feel safe. Okay. Whether it's inside or outside, that's what we need to do first.
Okay. Andres, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to talk on the safety aspect of this. First of all, we need to right off the back hire a PR and marketing agency for Miami Beach. That's solely for Miami Beach. We have to put an RFP out for this immediately. We have to control the narrative of why people need to be coming here to Miami Beach. Regarding the security aspect of Ocean Drive, you know, one of the craziest things to me is that there's no dedicated police officers to Ocean Drive. We have 5 police officers that are part of the entertainment district that rove over the entertainment district, but they're not assigned to Ocean Drive. And regarding spring break, you know, one of the key things is that people spend 8 hours drinking on the sand, illegal alcohol that they bring into the sand. And what we need to do during these special weekends is make sure that we have checkpoints on the entrances to the beaches to pull those bottles out of those coolers and out of those bags like they do at stadiums and arenas when they're going in, because they're illegal. And the last thing that we need to do is that we need to have people monitoring our cameras on Ocean Drive and in their entertainment district. It's been 5 years. We have 1,000 cameras in Miami Beach and not one person looking at them daily.
All right, we've got quick response here because we're just a matter of time before we move on to our mayoral contenders here. So for everybody, just name one. Which cultural arts and cultural institution do you consider yourself a fan of? Do you attend or support? Mitch, go ahead.
I serve on the board of the Miami Design Preservation League. I've served since 1994. I first got involved with the league in 1988 when I arrived here as a tour guide, and it's close to my heart.
Thank you.
And spent 13 years as chairman of both the Miami Beach and Miami-Dade County Historic Preservation Board.
Thank you. Tanya?
So, you know, that's like asking which is your favorite child.
Yes, it is. I understand that.
Okay, so
Make you pick.
also on the board of MDPL, love the Wilsonian because it's a jewel box of amazing treasures, but I have to say the band shell is magic. It is an incredible venue with great acts and a true community resource, not just for North Beach and Greater Miami Beach, but for Greater Miami in its entirety.
Joe?
Tom, I'll say the band shell as well because that's what I'm most easily able to enjoy with my entire family, be it my senior citizen parents or my 6-year-old daughter. I do hope that we come back to implementing that $160 million of proceeds from the GEO bonds to those dedicated projects because I think that's important. In 2017, the city had a $450 million GEO bond for general obligation purposes, over $300 million of which goes unused now. So it is important that we talk about how that implementation would happen right away.
Great, thank you. Marcella?
This is an impossible question for me because I've been supporting all of these organizations for over 20 years, and I really love and appreciate them as a patron, a supporter, but I'm gonna, if I have to choose one, I'm gonna choose the best for the sake of this conversation.
Bass folks over there, nice to see everybody. Thank you.
Peanut Gallery.
David?
One of the most spectacular shows that I've been to this past year was the Classical Musical Festival. And I sit on the Visitor Convention Authority, and we give grants to entities that come in and want to promote their events. And there was the symphony, David Rossi, Michael Rossi, sorry. He threw together a symphony with Hansel and Gretel. I brought my children to this, and it's a 3D immersive atmosphere. I think this room actually does it too.
Faena.
Yes, it is at the Faena, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was spectacular. My children loved it. I loved it, and I want to bring more of that to Miami Beach.
Great. Yeah, you could see we were moved by it. Andres?
I'm a big fan of Faena, and shout out to Jimena, who's here in the front row. But I love the New World, and I love the wall cast that's outside, and I'll be here for Romeo and Juliet next month. By the way, I would love to see the landscaping outside the New World uplit so that it could be enjoyed at night.
Uplit, there we go. Okay, fair enough. Well, to the candidates, thank you very much for spending your time with us tonight. Everybody stay close. We've got the mayoral candidates coming up next here as we meet the candidates and hear their thoughts about arts and culture in Miami Beach. Candidates in Miami Beach, so good evening. Thanks again for sticking around here at the New World Center. We have our 4 candidates for your next Miami Beach mayor on stage. Let's give them a round of applause, and thank you for coming tonight. Much appreciated, gentlemen. So they've had the good fortune of listening to the conversation with some of the folks that they're likely to serve with in the next commission. So we're going to wipe our question slate clean. I already have 2 from the audience, so please continue to write your questions during our conversation. We'll collect those and bring those up here. So as we get started, we will start with this question. Introduce yourself, but the question is, how do you, as mayor, how will you measure a return on investment in arts and culture in Miami Beach? Go ahead.
Hi, Commissioner Stephen Miner. Hopefully my wife and 2 kids are watching right now. So I grew up in New York City, and visiting museums and the theater was fairly regular occurrence. It wasn't weekly, but fairly regular. I actually worked in DC for a little while on a case and got to visit the cultural institutions there. And one thing you realize about New York and DC is that it is an absolute economic driver and brings in capital. And we have the cultural institutions here in Miami Beach, but it is, in my opinion, it is not yet that economic driver that we need. Obviously, the GO bond's hopefully going to go a long way towards that. But when we see, and I'm gonna get to the answer the specific question, but I'm gonna also tie in public safety, because if you do not have the public safety, you will not get to the level that we need to and the return on investment. And that goes for Collins Park and cleaning that up, and what the situation we have the homeless there, and also spring break, and I'll have more specific to discuss on that. But the return on investment, to me, is partly economics and economic dollars. And when you see someone like Ken Griffin from Chicago move here because of public safety, and he's now donating close to $1 billion of art, loaning, that's how you measure the success that we can bring to Miami and Miami Beach. But to me, the success is not just about dollars, it's about the commitment. Right now, I don't see our residents and our tourists using our cultural institutions to the way they can. Again, and that's why I brought up New York City and DC, because when you live in those places, like I did, well, I didn't live in DC, but I was there for almost a year on a case. But when you see the residents and tourists utilize and know that when I'm going there, I am going to visit and I am going to take advantage of those cultural institutions. And we do not have that yet. And that's what we need to transform and make our city known as not just this party town, but a cultural hub throughout the world.
How do you measure that, Commissioner? I mean, how do you encourage that? You know, the beach in New York in December is not necessarily a place to go visit that MoMA is competing with, right? The mall in January in Washington, the Smithsonian's not competing with any sand, sun, and surf. So how do you go about measuring that? How do you go about trying to encourage that?
Well, there's a couple of ways. We heard a little bit about marketing, and I'm not just saying this, that this came up for a vote a couple of years ago. I believe I was the only commissioner who pushed to hire an outside marketing firm for our city, and a big part of that was the culture institutions. I'm also been a strong supporter of a 2 a.m. I voted every time to support 2 a.m. Not that that's the fix-all for everything, but again, it's getting away from this all-goes party scene and developing this arts and culture. And I'll add one more. I have a current initiative right now that we've discussed several times at our commission meetings, and we're going to continue to discuss it because I'm continuing to push it to get the support I need from my colleagues. But spring break specifically, I have a proposal, secured perimeters, and on the other side of those secured perimeters, arts and culture, with sculptures, with art, and everyone's going to want to come, in my opinion, because you're going to go through a secured perimeter, so you know it's going to be safe. So it's kind of taking a little bit of the beach aspect of Art Basel, but then making it for those several weekends in March where we have that issue and drive the point home that we are an arts and culture destination for everyone to enjoy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mike, how do you measure a return on investment for arts and culture?
So you've got 2 folks up here who have lived on the beach since the 90s, myself and former Commissioner Gongora. So we've seen the transformation on the beach, but we've also seen the transformation countywide. So throughout the late 90s and essentially through most of the early 2000s, we were the only game in town. There was no Wynwood, there was no design district, Brickell wasn't a place to go. If you lived anywhere in Dade County and you wanted to go out, go to dinner, whatever it is, you came to the beach and specifically to South Beach. That's not the case anymore. We have to focus first on competition within the region. And the answer to your question, and I'm not ignoring your question, the answer to your question is positive foot traffic. If you can walk down Washington Avenue and feel safe and feel comfortable and be surrounded by folks that are hopping from one cultural institution to another, and you don't have to worry about some of the issues that we're dealing with these days. And it's not just Washington Avenue, it's Collins, it's Ocean Drive as well. But the ROI is being able to drive down or walk down some of our main streets in South Beach in particular and see that there has been a shift. There has been an increase in foot traffic, especially in the evenings, but an increase in positive foot traffic, people coming in and out of institutions, more restaurants, more outdoor cafes opening up that feed off that same foot traffic, and that's how you'd be able to recognize that you've actually put a dent in it, whether it be near the Wilsonian, near the Jewish Museum, in this area in particular as well.
You've used this phrase, positive foot traffic. Is there negative foot traffic?
There is.
How do you define negative foot traffic? And I don't mean a deficit of foot traffic, a drop in actual feet, but it sounds like there's something else involved with that.
There is. So I live on First Street, and just on the drive over, there were at least 4 different incidents just on Washington Avenue where you had 2 or 3 police cars on one block and then another block and another block. You had crime scene techs taking photographs on another block just in the one drive over. And it's not like we were looking for it. You couldn't avoid it. And you couldn't avoid it because there were problems everywhere. And we used to have those problems in our parks. I created the Park Ranger program. We essentially eliminated all those problems in our parks. And our parks are essentially 3-dimensional art sculptures in perpetuity. But we need to be doing the same thing on Washington, on Collins, on Ocean Drive, and other areas where we have problems.
Thank you. Commissioner, how about for you, your measurement of return on investment for an arts and culture?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Gongora. I served 3 times on the Miami Beach Commission between 2006 and 2021. I'm very excited right now to be running for office because I do think the prior commissions have laid some important seeds for the future of arts and culture. Clearly, the GEO bond, which is going out to market now and being funded, will be transformational for the facilities that we're looking at above us on the screen. So we'll have the opportunity to measure that in the future by seeing how that money is implemented, how these capital facilities are improved, and how they transform the area. One thing we've seen in other cities, when you inject arts and culture, it changes the community. We saw it in New York City. We're starting to see it happen in the Collins Park neighborhood, where there's so many of these facilities. And I remember back when I was first elected in 2006, one of the first meetings that I had was with Howard Herring and Michael Tilson Thomas. I think even Frank Gehry attended one of them. How many of you were around back at that time period? Okay, then you'll remember that right next door, where we now have Soundscape Park, there were 2 asphalt parking lots. And it was very, very, very confrontational with a lot of residents and Lincoln Road merchants. They did not want to lose their parking. They did not want to lose those surface lots. So one of the first votes that I got heavily involved in and participating was transforming the very facility that we sit in today. We created what you now see as Soundscape Park, and we helped fund building this building, which broke ground at the beginning of 2008. It was another difficult conversation at that time about money, and the city of Miami Beach ended up assisting with $15 million so that this project could get built. But this project and Soundscape Park has been transformational for this area in Miami Beach. And as your mayor, I look forward to implementing the GEO bond monies to continue to transform our neighborhood. And I believe as art and cultural facilities will grow, we will see better development. We will see more residents returning to be in Miami Beach. We will see crime go down as we see these facilities lit up and making it safer and a beacon for our residents. So it will be part of my plan as mayor to make Miami Beach better.
So, Michael, you can certainly measure crime, you can measure population. What do you mean by better development as a metric for an ROI for arts and culture?
Sure. I think we look for development, number one, that the residents want to live in. We want to see development that's good, that doesn't exceed height and FAR limits, as we've seen many destroying our city. We want to create housing at all different kinds of price levels as well throughout the city so that we can have a well-rounded base and community. It's nice to have all the high-end living where multimillionaires can live, but it's also nice to have housing where the people that work in this theater and the people that work on Lincoln Road and actors and performers can live as well. So I look forward to integrating that, and that will be a measure.
Great, thank you, Michael. Bill, welcome, nice to see you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and thank everyone also for being here. So,
The ROI question, sir.
yeah,
for
I'm
arts
going
and
to get
culture.
to it. I'm going to get to it.
I
Remember,
know-
all politicians answer their own questions
I'm
first.
sure, yes, yes. You'll have a
So
few seconds to do
I'd
that.
like to start by saying that I'm not your usual candidate. I'm different from the rest of the folks here, all three of them. I'm not a politician, but I am a leader, and I haven't spent the last 20 years walking the halls of City Hall or engaged in local politics, and that's exactly the point. So when you think of me, think of change. I believe Miami Beach is ready for a pivotal change, a point of inflection. We're changing a lot of leaders. We're on the cusp of greatness, but we have challenges, and that's exactly why I'm running, to give a clear choice between myself and my opponents, and also I am an element of change. Now, let's get to the question. So I was actually struck by David Suarez. Where are you, David? Are you still here? So he was refreshing in that he said he knew nothing about this topic, and he was very honest and open about that. He was the least qualified. I think I am the most qualified. Why am I the most qualified? So we make a good team, David, on this.
I don't think you get a running mate when you're running for mayor
Yeah,
of
well,
Miami Beach,
yeah.
Bill.
This is what I do. I bring people together with different strengths. He knows nothing, I know everything. But David, no offense, you know a lot about a lot of things, and I appreciate your answers. And by the way, I thought all the commissioners were terrific tonight. So let's get back.
They're not all commissioners yet, Bill, but go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, we're going to make at least 3 of them
Okay.
commissioners. Okay. So just a bit about myself, not to go on too long. The major part of my career, I've had 3 separate careers. I spent the first 2 decades of my life here in Miami, and then I went off to join the Army. Went to West Point first, Army Rangers, followed in the front lines of combat. So that took me away from Miami for 20 years. And then I built a global business, and then I became a global health ambassador. I always had one foot here, always. So in the last 4 decades I have. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in my travels, but growing MTV, Nickelodeon, CMT, BET, 20 different brands, I built from scratch, the largest global media company in the world. And I did it largely based on creativity. And when the creativity happens, business comes afterwards. There's absolutely no question. So one example, Miami Beach. What did I do? Hometown boy makes good. So I come back and I locate the headquarters of Latin America, all of Latin America, on Lincoln Road, creating 400, 500 jobs. And then we set the pace for the creative to come. The agencies then came. The record companies then came. And we had a creative edge. We don't have it now as much as then, but we had a creative edge. And by the way, when I grew the MTV network all around the world, I saw the same thing happen in Barcelona. I saw it happen in London, in Berlin especially, on and on and on.
Phil,
How do
give
you
us that
measure it?
return on investment.
How do you
got-
measure
yep,
it?
Yep.
Very simple. You measure attendance for one thing. That's a pretty easy one. But you'll see the economic growth in all these different areas besides just the one particular event. You know, the thing that strikes me about Art Basel, it's not about Art Basel. I mean, you know, it's kind of ironic that it's known as Art Basel. It's bigger than Art Basel, Basel, Switzerland. But when you go to Art Basel, you go to the convention center, it's not my favorite place to go. But where you go is all the other ones that have grown up, the organic growth of the other art displays, whether they're on the beach or all around the city. And that's what being a creative capital will do. It grows organically the other businesses.
So how, as a group, how will you approach policymaking in order to encourage that kind of organic growth? What's the policy framework
So
that
here's
you
the-
want to put in place
Right.
as mayor as it relates to arts and culture?
I do think Miami Beach has a lot my vision is to make Miami Beach the #1 city in the world, not just the country, not the state, not Miami, in the world for arts and culture. And you can do that, and the pieces are already there. I mean, we have $159 million. That's unbelievable. We also have a terrific support from the residents because they voted it in.
So what are your priorities to make Miami Beach #1 in the world for arts?
Okay, so the first thing I would do is break the logjam, because I was about to say, we got $159 million. We got a great resident base. We got a great creative base here, but nothing's getting done. And this is what I do. This is what I want to do. I want to break the logjam. I give the current administration an A+ for setting the pieces in place. But look at the Byron Carlisle. It's been sitting there for how long? All the other projects just sitting there. We got to break through the logjam. And that's what I promised to do.
Thanks.
I want to do it because it's action. Action with integrity, and the integrity part's an important part.
Commissioner, how about for you? What's the policymaking framework that you would advocate as mayor for arts and culture and the kinds of investments that the GEO bond allows for?
Okay, first, I'm not a career politician. I was never even in the 4th floor of City Hall until shortly before I was elected. I'm a federal law enforcement officer with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So, but now to get to your question, I hit on this in my opening remarks, and I'm going to continue with it. You need to get the average person back into these institutions. There are such jewels that we have in our city, and I can tell you when I talk to friends of mine, they have never been in the Bass, they've never been to a symphony, they've never been to the ballet. And when you're in New York City, that is not the case. Everybody has been to the theater, everyone has been to the Met. That is not the case here, so how do we drive that? I think the GEO bond will go a long way. By the way, we issued those bonds, about 101 million of it, incredible success, and that's a testament to our city and our cultural institutions. We had listed it at a 5.27% rate, and we got 4.45.
Oversubscribed, I believe is the phrase.
Quadruple oversubscribed. We had 398 million in oversubscription for 101 million, which dropped the interest rate. So that's a testament to the success that we have and can continue to have. But and it gets back to marketing, it gets back to, and I'll agree with Bill, we got to get these projects done. We have to get it, but I think we are moving in that direction. They're moving along.
Mike, how about for you? Your policy framework to approach arts and culture investments.
I'll keep it basic. It requires guts. So you have 4 people on stage here. One person on this stage actually voted no when given the option to put this bond on the ballot. You have another one who stayed silent during the process. You have another one who wasn't living here. And then you have me who actually shot a commercial advocating on behalf of this bond last year. And that's the difference. That's before anybody had a feel for whether or not it was going to be embraced the way that it was. It involves guts. And when I am your mayor, I will be exhibiting those guts when it comes to getting these projects done. When I served as your commissioner, we were getting projects done. Things were not getting caught up with paralysis by analysis. And I'll give you another reason another way we're gonna do this. So when I served in the legislature, one of the uphill battles was working with Film Florida and trying to bring film incentives and filmmaking, TV and movies, back to Florida, getting it back from Georgia. And I received awards from Film Florida 2 of my 4 years in the legislature for my advocacy, because we used to shoot movies down here. We used to shoot TV shows down here. Some of people's visions of Miami Beach are Miami Vice, and then that all stopped. It stopped because of Tallahassee, but there is a movement right now, even in Tallahassee, with some of the more moderates in the legislature who are going to be pushing forward. And as your mayor, I will continue to be an advocate for the film industry, for the television industry, not just because it creates jobs, but you want to talk about hiring a marketing agency, that's your marketing agency.
Just back to the GEO bond for everybody. Is there anyone that opposes implementing the GEO bond, should they be elected? Okay. Michael, what's your policy framework that you would put in place if
Sure.
elected mayor, for arts and culture investment?
Yeah, before I answer that, it's kind of amusing when you run for office and you go through these because you hear about career politicians. It's kind of hard to have a career in Miami Beach when commissioners make $6,000 a year to serve. And you hear a lot about people that claim to get things done. But the truth of the matter is there's not a strong mayor here. You have to work collaboratively as a commissioner or a mayor to get anything accomplished. I'm actually, because of my years of caring and dedicated service, really the only one with a proven track record. I talked to you in a little bit about my opening about being able to be part of the transformation of the New World Symphony and Soundscape Park. But because of my service, I've participated in so many other projects over the years. Art Basel happened before my first election, but it was still relatively new. And as a new commissioner in 2006, I was part of growing it. One of the people up here talked about the organic growth. It wasn't just happening by itself. We were out there as a city actively pursuing other festivals to come here, whether it was Pulse, whether it was Scope, whether it was coordination with Design Miami. We worked very hard to make that happen, and I'm proud of that service. Now, when it comes to the regulatory framework for moving forward, there's only one person sitting up here who's actually served on all the subcommittees of the commission. Finance, working on budgeting, land use, working on zoning and other regulations, and the neighborhoods committee. I have the experience to move it forward. Number one is on part of the finance component, we have to make sure that the bond is properly put out on the street, that we get good interest rates, and that that money is properly spent and overseen. And then using land use and zoning experience, we have to work with these groups, these ones up here, that are receiving, anywhere from a couple $100,000 to almost $31 million to make these facilities better. We have to make sure that we give them whatever support they need from the commission, that they have perhaps zoning changes that they may need to make those projects better. So I would work with the commission to make sure that, number one, they're properly financed, and number two, they're properly built.
On the question of the bonds and the finance, a question from the audience regarding Go Bonds, and I'll put this, Michael, to you first. What stopgaps would you initiate to protect the Go Bonds value? And the value of the bonds, the oversubscription, comes from the full faith and credit of the taxpayers of Miami Beach in order to pay back the borrowing. So what kind of stopgaps would you want to put in place to protect that value?
What we've traditionally done in the past, and I do believe it would be a good idea in this case, is we create a GeoBond Oversight Committee. As mayor, I would like to have the ability to appoint the majority of that committee. And rather than a lot of the people point like friends of friends, people that they like, I want to make sure we have really qualified people up there, people with financial backgrounds, people with art backgrounds, people with construction backgrounds, and maybe even a former elected official just to bring their institutional knowledge to that committee and make sure it moves forward. We would make sure that the funds are properly spent and accounted for. And we're in a really difficult period. Anybody that's doing any type of building at all knows that the costs are going up, both of labor and materials. So it's possible that the $159 million won't be enough to do those projects. And we'll have to get creative and find ways to either A, look for additional funds, or B, value engineer where the opportunities arise.
Yeah, 159 million isn't what it was just a couple of years ago, right? Yeah, that's an inflation joke, by the way, people, in case anybody was keeping track of that.
By the way, it never works out. The first GeoBond from the 90s when I was elected, I think the GeoBond Oversight Committee was still spending it like 20 years later.
Yeah.
So as mayor, I want to make sure this one gets spent efficiently.
Stephen, I just want to get you back to the GeoBond stopgap to protect the value, since you mentioned how the marketplace responded to the first tranche of borrowing.
Well, seeing how interest rates have risen significantly since we issued a significant portion of the bonds, it's a good thing we did do it because it would be even more expensive now. But again, we did lock in a pretty good rate, 4.45. The GeoBond Oversight Committee, and I'm going to give a shout out to Karen Revo right there because I was actually, and I see Jack and there's probably others, I'm sorry I'm missing people, but I was actually appointed to the initial GeoBond, not the arts and culture one. So I sat in every meeting and saw the work that they did and the diligence that they did to go through these projects. And I attended a number of the GeoBond, the arts and culture ones, but not all of them. But I know based on their work, they're really making sure that our taxpayers are getting the value. And the beauty is they're public meetings. Anybody can go attend and see the work that they do.
Let's tackle housing affordability as it relates to the arts and culture. Bill, I'll put this one to you. What kinds of strategies would you like to put in front of your fellow commissioners, if you are elected as mayor, that go after housing affordability and really put in place some strategies to allow your arts and culture workforce to be able to live in the place that they work?
So I'm going to make you angry right now because I'm going to start by also giving a shout out to Karen because there is an oversight committee. And if you don't know Karen, get to know her because she doesn't know something about everything. She knows everything about everything. And that leadership is in good hands. So, and I have to answer this too, I'm so sorry. Part of this bond and worry about the interest rates and how you keep it all buttoned up, part of it is being on budget and on time. And we're neither are for those two elements, on time and on budget. Affordable housing. So I think the commissioners had actually a very good level of conversation about what, the commissioners to be elected had a very good discussion. And I took notes, actually. I thought each one had really, really good things to say about it. But we got to get this solved. So Collins Park, we all know it's great, but it's a drop in the bucket. We can do maybe more of Collins Park, but here is my #1 priority. We have let the developers run all over us, and there's no reason for that. Miami Beach has benefited over the years from development, but it often has not been smart development. What do I mean by smart development? If you want a precious piece of real estate on this amazing island, you have to come forward and help us with affordable housing. We have to leverage the developers more. We have to get our mojo back and our swagger because there's a lot to benefit just by negotiating better deals with the developers.
What's your formula, Bill? What would be your formula, your opening bid if somebody has a piece of land and says, I want to put this kind of building on it, you're mayor, they come to you. What's your opening bid to say number of units for workforce housing, affordable, means testing on income? Give us a sense of how that would come to your administration and how you would begin to view it.
Yeah, I'll give you a hint. It's not the Clevelander. That is the opposite of my opening bid. I don't even take that bid seriously. It's hard to even sit down and negotiate against somebody that is so off the wall. That will never happen on Ocean Drive, so it's got to be environmentally compatible among all the other things. 40%? I don't know. It doesn't have to be in the same building necessarily. It can be somewhere else. Okay. But there's always a starting number and everything is negotiable. I built a global business from scratch. I negotiate every single day of my life. If anyone knows how, ask my wife. Yeah. If anyone knows how to negotiate, I can do it.
Mike, how about affordable housing as it relates to your arts and culture workforce?
So in some of these forums, I tend to remind people that I'm the youngest candidate on the stage, but I'm actually older than the governor. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm the only one up here who has experience in Tallahassee. And although I appreciate Mr. Rohde's efforts to, or proposed efforts to, really tamp down on the developers, we've tried that. And you know what happens? Out-of-state, out-of-town billionaires will pick up the phone and just find out, who do I cut a check to in Tallahassee? And I'm just gonna have you preempted. And that's essentially what's happening with the Clevelander. Like, let's be realistic. Let's have an adult conversation and really not talk, no platitudes, no empty promises about affordable housing, and let's have a real conversation about it. Because if we're having a real conversation, every time I hear somebody talking tough about developers, I get a call from one of my buddies in Tallahassee, and I find out that there's gonna be a new bill coming, just like there was one that died last year. Within the last week of session, that would have been even more disastrous than this Live Local Act, because that was really gonna crush us, because that was gonna take it a step further. It didn't even include affordable housing. It just literally said, if you had a building in a flood zone, you can essentially knock it down if it couldn't be built today, if it wasn't up to code. So let's be realistic and talk about it. Now, as to affordable housing, I just posted a video a few hours ago because I had tripped upon a plaque that I found with my name on it from back in 2015, where we were converting buildings like the London House right around the corner from here, where we took it and we made meaningful workforce housing. We took a project, the city took over the building, and we should continue to do that, taking over buildings. The city should do it ourselves. We can't wait on the private sector to do this. We have land, we have parking lots. We need to start thinking forward, follow strong towns if you can do it, where we can go back to where you have housing and commercial and parking all in the same buildings. But in particular, the one around the corner, we were building larger units. And the reason why we were building larger units is because everybody talks about affordable housing, but if you want to have workforce housing, you can't just build 1 bedrooms all across the city or studios all across the city. You need to have 2 bedrooms. You need to be encouraging families, teachers, doctors, nurses, our city employees. They're not going to live in a 1-bedroom or in a studio. They're going to live somewhere else where they can get a better bang for their buck, and then they'll just get stuck in traffic on, on the 112 and on 195 trying to get to work.
So, Mike, you'd like to see the city be the developer?
Absolutely. I think that the city, yes.
And would there be some kind of means testing so that it's workforce housing or affordable for a type of income, for instance, that is generated in arts and culture?
Yes, and that's exactly what we did in the London House and multiple other projects. We're limited if we're using HUD funds. We have a limitation as to what we can do, but if we're doing it on our own, especially if we're doing it on our own property, and these completely underutilized parking lots that we have, there are things that we can do where we can create live, work, play environments where people aren't even bringing cars anymore, where they can live like they do in Sunset Harbor, where you essentially, if you work in Sunset Harbor, you never have to leave your own neighborhood because you got everything right there.
So two of you have mentioned the Clevelander project. Of course, that is really the first significant test of this Live Local Act, which was passed by the legislature in this last session and signed by Governor DeSantis. It allows certain types of upzoning and larger developments essentially to happen. How, Stephen, could that affect housing options for arts and culture employees under your administration if elected?
So the Clevelander is not serious for several reasons, and I don't want to really focus on the Clevelander, but it's not serious because even under the Live Local Act as it is today, they couldn't do what they proposed. 300 feet, they could do maybe 50, 60 tops. Mike is right. The Tallahassee could potentially change the Live Local Act, but we fought back last time. We fought hard, and we actually stopped it. So there's no fait accompli here. And one thing is, I'll fight.
But how could that act, though, affect the possibility of more affordable housing that is directed toward an arts and culture workforce?
Well, in theory, the Live Local Act is trying to spur, and that's what the Clevelander was trying to use. But A, it doesn't give them that. But B, overdevelopment is not the answer. It's not the answer, and it's not going to work, and you're going to get a mutiny from your residents. Actually, one of the proposals I have right now that I think would actually spur in a roundabout way is I have a proposal right now when it comes to commission for a vote to increase the FAR, that's the density that we use to calculate, to increase the density height is 5/7 vote. I have a proposal right now that was supposed to be on our last commission meeting, but was never heard. Hopefully it'll be heard in October, to make it 6/7. And that to me is going to force developers, because it's going to be harder to get the votes. It's going to force them to come to the table with us. And I'll give my colleagues a lot of the credit because there have been a number of, really in the last 6 months, we've seen a major shift in our commission meetings and the items that are being brought to try to bring the affordable housing, workforce housing. The Barclay was discussed at the last meeting extensively. So we are taking steps, but certainly the overdevelopment, that's a non-starter, and we're going to fight that.
Mike, you heard from the commissioner candidates a lot of talk around trying to address housing affordability through addressing short-term leases. Mm-hmm. How would you approach short-term leases as it relates to housing affordability in an administration?
Sure. Well, first going back, there's been a lot of discussion. Actually, I thought I was the longest serving person because I remember when one of my opponents was appointed by me to a committee. There's a lot of preemptions going on at the state right now, and they've made it very difficult for local government to be able to do what we need to do for the best of our community. The state legislature for several years has returned to us with bad votes, tying our hands on what we can do, and certainly a lot of that has to do with housing. It would be interesting if we could do like New York does, where they can actually legislate and require that certain projects build a level of affordable or workforce housing in a new development, but the state doesn't allow that. Right. During my last 2 years on the commission, in 20 and 21, I chaired our city's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and we got serious about getting things done. I sponsored and the commission unanimously approved waivers of fees for affordable and workforce housing project. I sponsored and pushed through the commission fast tracking of permits for affordable and workforce housing projects. And we did start conversations about potential tax breaks. That didn't go through. But I can tell you, notwithstanding those incentives, nothing's gotten built. So what did the city do? We looked to our own property. I was on the commission and one of the strong votes and spearheading votes of the Collins Park Workforce Housing Facility, which is targeting housing for artists and cultural employees and city employees. I would look for opportunities like that where the city has properties where we can continue to replicate that. And yes, it will take time to do, but at least we'll get something done. Short-term rentals. I actually was on the commission in 2010 and 2011, back when we made them illegal in Miami Beach and all single-family homes. And it was a very hard vote to do because there were different communities that wanted to retain the ability to do short-term rentals because people use their units as income-producing properties. So certain areas were left open, certainly along Collins Avenue. The commission after us opened up North Beach, and it has become problematic. I'm not a fan of short-term rentals. In fact, I do like the idea of not permitting anything else to convert, but I don't think you can under the current law. Right now, you can't convert single-family homes to short-term rentals, and I'd say half of the multi-dwelling unit buildings you also can't convert.
Michael, you had something on short-term rentals?
Yeah, just briefly. So, both on my time on the city commission and my time in Tallahassee, like this was one of the hills I was willing to die on. Illegal short-term rentals, or in our case, being able to preserve our grandfathered in map. Like right now, we're grandfathered in. Every year, Airbnb and these other short-term rental companies will actively spend a ton of money in Tallahassee. With one stroke of the pen, our entire infrastructure, housing infrastructure, could collapse with one preemption. And we need to be prepared for that. So we need to be very careful about how far we go in another direction. One of the things that we were creatively did when I was on the commission to make it even better, we were having problems in our condominiums. And what would end up happening is that apartments, condos, people were short-term renting those out. So what we did is we empowered the condo boards. We empowered the actual condominium associations to approve or disapprove whether or not they were going to allow it. Even if they were in a zone that allowed for short-term rentals, we made it a condition of getting a business tax receipt that you had to have condo approval, which was a huge blow to folks that were doing this in condos, not just on Ocean Drive, just south of 5th Street, but in Sunset Harbor, adjacent other areas in South Beach, and really lowered that inventory, making more units available only for long-term rentals for folks like in the arts and cultural.
Mike, just real quick, last point.
Thank you. I'm a board-certified condo lawyer. That's my job. And actually, they really didn't do anything. Right now, condominium declarations, which are the charters, essentially, of your condominium buildings, they allow you to either do short-term rentals or not. And there's no cookie-cutter answer. One other point I wanted to make before we move on.
Real quick, please.
In New York, they've actually cracked down on Airbnbs, and that's because the hotel industry
Significantly
got
in the city,
involved,
right.
and they came after the government, and the government allowed them to do so. Certainly, we have a very high-end hotel industry here with a lot of money, and I think they actually agree with our residential community that they don't want a ton of Airbnb and short-term rentals. And I think this is something we could partner on with the hotels to go to Tallahassee and try to change these laws.
All right, let's move on to the environment, something we haven't mentioned as it intersects art and culture this evening. Bill, I'll have you tackle this one first. This is from the audience. How will you use art and culture to storytell and protect Miami Beach's natural resources?
Oh my gosh, that's such a softball question. Thank you, whoever asked that.
Be sure not to miss it.
I'm the king of storytelling, I'm here to say. Storytelling does everything. It does everything. We have found over the years, whenever we get involved in a social responsible issue, storytelling is the most impactful. AIDS is only the biggest issue we have. We helped fight the pandemic, and we're the largest multimedia company in the world to fight AIDS relief. So much so that the United Nations may be their ambassador for HIV/AIDS. And how did we do it? we integrated all our messages back in the 90s when AIDS was completely out of control. It was all about prevention and stigma. And you needed to fight the stigma in order to get tested, in order to get treatment. So it's a very logical chain. So what did we do? We integrated all those messages in our scripts. And you asked, how do you measure things like that? We would screen an outdoor in Africa, one of our shows. It was called Suga, and it was a Gossip Girl. Everybody would like to watch it just as a show, but we had our messages integrated in. So we measured very specifically after you watched that show how many people went to this facility next door to get tested. And sure enough, most of the people went next door to get tested. Why is testing so important? We have to fight the stigma, number one, but it also gets you on the treatment, and treatment works. So that's just one example. Storytelling can make behavioral change.
One example of what you've done in the past. How would you relate that to Miami Beach's natural resources?
Natural resources,
Natural
or you're
resources,
referring
using
to the
art and culture to protect Miami Beach's natural resources.
Well, I don't know who watches Apple TV, but there's a show right now called Extrapolations. And the third episode in that series shows what Miami Beach is going to look like in 1946. And it's flooded. It takes place in a synagogue. If you haven't seen it, it's compelling viewing.
And in 2046? In
2046, I'm
Gotcha,
sorry,
okay.
what did I say,
You said
1846?
1946.
So if you watch this show, you suddenly come to the conclusion this can happen because you're seeing a vivid portrayal of what it's going to look like if the flooding is unchecked. And I can guarantee you, when you watch this show, you're going to be energized to do something about it. Now, we can talk about all the things we need to do.
Right. We leave that for the next forum, though.
Okay.
Right, fair enough, thank you. Michael, how about this, though? Using arts and culture to protect Miami Beach's natural resources.
Yeah, shortly after my first election, I created our city's sustainability committee that got to work on preserving the environment. And there was a very active activist back then, Luis Rodriguez, who brought me this project that he wanted us to do down south of Fifth. He wanted us to do an underground aquatic art facility. And we couldn't get it done. I tried to get the funding and I couldn't pass it. But I was so excited during my final term on the commission to be the commission sponsor of the Reef Line, which is a really interesting underwater facility, and it's actually one of the projects up on the screen. I attended all of their events, and I look forward to working with them to see that as a reality. But that's one example. There's so many. People right now that travel have really changed the reasons that they like to come here. And as we look to recast Miami Beach as something other than just a party place, people want to have a different experience when they come here. They want to have bike rides through beautiful nature trails that passes through outdoor art sculptures. They want to go on rides and boats or canoes or paddle boards through the Collins Canal, where they can enjoy some element of arts incorporated in that. So I'm a huge supporter of the arts, but I'm a huge supporter of the environment. As mayor, I'll look for every opportunity we have to merge these two, just like the Reef Line.
Stephen, how about for you, this merge or intersection between arts, culture, and protecting Miami Beach's natural resources, which are a significant economic driver, too?
So since Michael mentioned the Reef Line, I'll go move on from where I have an initiative actually that's going to be a pilot program. One of the first cities to use it, a 3D printing of seawalls. So we're actually going to be doing a pilot program on that. I think it could be something, really we could be one of the pioneers really in our country for that, and we're moving forward with that. It got approval from our commission. Biscayne Bay, I mean, we haven't mentioned that, but that is an absolute necessity. I have an initiative right now, actually at our next public safety meeting, which I chair, we're gonna be discussing, because one of the issues that we get caught up is that our sea level resiliency projects keep getting delayed, because we have residents who are concerned, and I think rightfully so, that when the roads are raised too high, they're without the proper harmonization, their properties are gonna be flooded. But the problem is, and we've seen it, and we've seen some projects, but very few projects since I've been elected get done. And the bottom line is those water and sewer infrastructure has to be done. It's a real risk to Biscayne Bay, and it's a risk to our city, and the cost and the monumental cost. The bottom line is we keep pushing it back, and you see at the budget, we keep putting in capital projects, and we keep putting these infrastructure, water and sewer projects in the back burner, but we gotta stop doing that, and I'm actually trying to drive that forward, that we need to spend that money now.
Let me get to kind of a few quick answer questions here. Michael Grieco, I'll start with you. Would you support discounts for seniors and students to ensure art is available to all and not cost prohibitive? And if so, how would you do that?
I don't think anybody's going to say no to that question.
No, so the question
kind of
really
a
is,
softball.
how do you do it?
Well, it's not that complicated. You just make it a condition of some of the funds you're getting from the city. You ensure that all of these institutions are buying in to the concept. Listen, I've got a kid at Beach High. You know, I've got a teenager who needs to have access to all of these facilities. And, you know, same thing with our seniors. I mean, we want to make sure that we're encouraging everybody who lives on the beach, but especially our oldest and our youngest, that they're going. It's kind of a no-brainer. You just make it a condition. These folks are getting all of this taxpayer money. Anything that's taxpayer subsidized should be operating, you know, essentially at the will of the city when it comes to either discounting or essentially giving free to students and to seniors.
Would you extend that to all residents?
I'd start with the kids and the seniors
Okay.
first. I don't want to put anybody out of business. I mean, we want to generate revenue.
Right.
But I think that our you know, it's just, it's like what you do at the movies. You go to the movies, they have a senior discount, they have a kids discount. You do the same thing for all of our institutions.
Bill, what about that?
Well, definitely double down on all that. You know, I want to say something else about the seniors because we spent a lot of time with them. This is such a precious, precious community at Miami Beach that we need to do everything possible to make them safe, healthy, and just take care of them. I would double down on whatever benefits are now. You know, transportation, they can't even get into the, I have trouble sometimes getting into trolleys. The trolleys need to be electrified, you know, for climate change issues, but they also need to be improved for access. Some of the seniors can't get into them, and they need to be more often. So just bottom line, whatever we can do to the seniors, they talk about storytelling. They have, each one has an American dream that just blows me away every time I hear it. Escaping from this country or escaping from that country and settling here, and of struggle and how they have overcome that to become, I think, the greatest generation and inspirational citizens of our community. Whatever it takes to support them, we need to do.
As a condition of GEO bond money, would you say these organizations need to provide those kinds of discounts for those folks, seniors, students, or residents in total?
Okay, that's probably the easiest question you've asked all night. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Favorite discount.
Right. All right. Bill, you know in a negotiation, sometimes you got to get something on the record.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's why. Michael?
Well, yeah, of course. Well, first of all, the GEO bond money is only for capital improvements, so it couldn't be used for that. But we do have general city budget money. Everybody that knows me knows I love the seniors. It's a community that I've loved representing for many years. At Unidad, which is one of the facilities getting improved, I sponsored a senior lunchroom. So 250 low-income deserving seniors eat for free Monday through Friday every week. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. Putting food in people's bodies is very important. But I worked with all these facilities. Bass Museum, one example. Sylvia Cabina always opened up her facility to me. My aide, Diana, my long-term former aide who's here, we were constantly coordinating senior field trips for free. Most of these cultural facilities, if you call them, are happy to open it up to our senior community. Nobody else cared. I was shocked to learn that I was the only person on the commission that actually was doing this.
Steve, you spoke about getting residents involved in these art institutions. Is this something you would put into play if elected mayor?
Yeah, we should mention the STEAM Plus program that we have with really, it's an incredibly successful program, really partnering our amazing cultural institutions with our public schools. So continuing on that. But yes, you asked the question earlier. I think you said, would I as an elected official or as mayor, in this case, would I mandate that the institutions do that? I'd obviously want to partner. I don't think government's job is to just dictate things. You'd obviously try to work together. But yes, that would be a driving goal of mine to get our residents. Because I think if you can get our residents, the way I'm thinking, on a large scale to visit our cultural institutions, you're going to get the tourists to do it as well. It's going to kind of go together, and that has to be a concerted effort to do that, whether it be free or whatever kind of marketing aspect that we come up with. It's an absolute necessity. To me, it's a game changer.
So in our final moments here, I do want to go back and offer the opportunity for each of you to answer the vision question, because I haven't asked that specifically. Howard spoke about a quotation from 1961, We are closer to 2061 as we sit here today than we are to 1961. So look at Miami Beach 2061. Bill, what kind of vision do you have to build the kind of arts and culture mecca that Miami Beach could be if you are elected mayor?
Well, I always aspire for the top. So I want Miami Beach to be the #1 city in the world for arts and culture, full stop. And we have all the pieces in place to do that. We just need to get it done, and we need to do it in an honest way. And that's the main premise that I'm working on as in my campaign for mayor. But we can do this because the residents support it, and we have the money, and we have a diversified population already. So this is one of the easiest accomplishments, I believe, that we can do. We just have to have the political will, and I want Miami Beach to be #1, not just in the county or the state or the country, but in the entire world with arts and culture.
Michael, how about your vision?
Well,
for Miami
I hope
Beach
I'm
arts and
alive
culture?
then. First and foremost, we have a bit of a public safety issue in our city. This isn't the appropriate forum to really talk about it, but that's really my #1 issue in running. So as mayor, I hope to make the city safe again. I know that working with the police force, the Fraternal Order of Police has endorsed my candidacy, that will implement a plan that makes Miami Beach safe again. People will feel comfortable going back to Ocean Drive and Collins Avenue and Washington Avenue like they used to. We'll restore it to its former luster and glory. People won't talk about Ocean Drive in a derogative way. People will want to be there. People will be lining up. As part of my plan, we will have not only implemented this GEO bond of $159 million, but it'll be a catalyst for other art and cultural facilities and events to come to our city. And we'll be able to accomplish things that I've been wanting to accomplish that I've talked about for years. Bringing a light festival to Ocean Drive, like in Lyon, France, where we light up the street with beautiful cultural music that draws in residents and on a high level of tourism. And I've talked for years about really wanting to brand Miami Beach as something within the Latin music industry, a Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame, or to bring the Latin, something here of significance. And it will be here. We will be marked worldwide for this. And we will see that we have preserved the historic integrity of our city. Yes, there will be changes. Yes, there will be new developments, but we will retain our look. We will retain our identity. We will stop and protect this city from out-of-scale development like the Clevelander that's snipping away to threaten us. And we will make sure that Miami Beach continues to be that pristine, fabulous city that we love, except even better.
Michael, your vision for arts and culture in Miami Beach.
Is this the last question?
It's the last question that we're asking right now.
All right, there you go.
We'll see.
Wow, that was very lawyerly. I want to remind everybody that there's a whole big city across the bay, and most people around the world, actually people in the United States, they don't know the difference between Miami Beach, Miami, Miami-Dade. So we can talk about Miami Beach, Miami Beach, Miami Beach. But I served on the Arts Center board for 2 years, and it's not just about Miami Beach. We need to start thinking not just about our cultural institutions and not just partnering with the cultural institutions in Miami, but we've got to think bigger. And you know, when I took a risk on Miami New Drama about, what was it, about 7, 8 years ago now, maybe a little longer, myself and Commissioner Malikoff, we took that risk. We stuck our necks out for that group, and we need to start thinking about who's going to be next, the ones we don't know about, who's going to be that next force within the city. So the vision is almost hypothetical. What's the next Miami New Drama? What's the next visionary? Because it's not going to come from government. I have a t-shirt that I wear. It's like, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Nobody ever wants to hear that, okay? The best ideas, the only good ideas when it comes to art and culture, they're not coming from City Hall. They're coming from the institutions in this room, and they're coming from the institutions that may want to come here once they see that we've made a commitment to art and culture. I want to congratulate our current mayor for being the art and culture mayor. That's going to be his legacy, getting this bond across the finish line. As your mayor, it'll be my legacy to get the projects finished.
Stephen, your vision for arts and culture.
I started off by saying that our cultural institutions can be and are an economic driver for our city. Absolutely. And that will continue to grow. It won't come easy, but will continue to grow as we see more and more capital flock to South Florida and Miami Beach. But I am going to continue on the theme of public safety and law and order, even though this is not the forum, but I'm just going to take 20 seconds on it because it is absolutely critical. And people have called me the law and order commissioner. I've transformed our municipal prosecution team to make sure we're prosecuting. I'm sponsoring legislation along with some of my colleagues about homeless encampments. By the way, some people up here have publicly spoken out against that. I fought the judiciary when they proposed bail reform because we see it. We see what's happening in Chicago. Ken Griffin, I mentioned him. He's here now because of crime. We see what's happening in San Francisco, and sometimes it's not genteel to talk about it, but I'm willing to put my neck on the line. As I talked about spring break, I voted 2 a.m. I think that is an important aspect. We're calling it now the Art Deco district, right? We're trying to change it from the entertainment district, but that's not going to change with our current structure. I have a secured perimeter that I proposed. With art on the other side, it's really weaving in art everywhere. I have 2 proposals out there that haven't gained the traction I wanted, but New York has done this where they use their barriers, where they have barriers, and they use beautiful art and also our utilities. We can really have art everywhere. We're not utilizing it to the extent we can. And with our cultural institutions and the economic capital coming here, we can take it to even the next level.
Well, thank you to the mayoral candidates. I do have one final question, Mike, that I do want to ask in our final moments, and I'm going to make them have it short, because good art is to inspire, right? Why do we seek out art just as individuals? It's to be thought-provoking. It's to be inspired. It's to look at our own humanity and elsewhere. So I want to put it to the 4 of you, and Bill, I'll start with you. Give us just one quick answer of some art that you still draw inspiration from.
Well, I have to go to music. I mean, music was, for us, the vehicle of cultural exchange. We brought people together. We brought Palestinians and Israelis.
What's on your playlist, Bill? That's what we want to know, all right? If it's music.
You wouldn't know.
Try me.
Okay. I'll try. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because, I had a rule that if once I did that, the artist thought I was playing favorites, and there you go. But I will say this: music has the power to inspire, and it can bring people together. I've seen it, and I have all these examples around the world of it happening.
Great.
And I would look forward to making music a prime part, once again, of Miami Beach, not just all the other arts, but also music. We need to do something about the Fillmore, make it the state of the art. We didn't talk about that, but a facility that has a technology that's best in the world. There's so many things we can do. But anyway, thank you
Music.
for the question.
Thank you, Bill. I
Music.
appreciate it. Mike, inspirational art.
Well, I look at outdoor art. I love art in public places. I take a lot of inspiration from Italy, which is one of my favorite countries to visit. One of the things that I love about visiting cities like Rome is that you have beautiful fountains and beautiful sculptures and beautiful things to see just walking around every day that everybody can enjoy. As mayor, I really want to transform Ocean Drive and Lincoln Road to meccas of art. I love that we got to start with the Botero sculptures and some other types of facilities, but I think we have so much opportunity to rebrand public art.
The Italian Plaza. We'll go that way. Thank you, Mike. Mike, your inspirational art.
Fine, yeah.
I'm going to go a little rogue. So I went to undergrad in D.C., and I spent many an evening sitting on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And the Lincoln Memorial, to me, which is art, and some people forget that, is so inspiring for me. And it's something that inspired me to work in the U.S. Congress, and it eventually inspired me to run for office. And those evenings that I spent there, I hold them, I cherish them. And, I'm going to continue to think about how art intersects with government the way it did then.
Thank you. Stephen?
I'm going to get a little, go on the emotional side. The Hand by the Holocaust Memorial. Have you ever gone right up to it? I actually pass it every day in my car, but it doesn't do it justice. You got to go right up to. It is an amazing piece, and maybe it's Yom Kippur being yesterday. Maybe it's my parents and grandparents lost a lot of family in the Holocaust, but it is one of the most powerful, and there's so much to say, but it's one of the most powerful pieces you will ever witness in your life. So if anybody hasn't, please go up and see it up close.
Well, to the 4 of you, thank you for spending your evening with us in this conversation. To the audience, thank you for all the attention and the questions. How about a round of applause for our tech folks helping us out? Howard, thank you for being such a wonderful host here this evening, and to everybody at the New World Center, have a terrific evening. Thank you so much.